Welcome to My Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I've helped hundreds of people create forever homes. I can't wait to share the journey with you. So let's start. Welcome everyone to today's episode of the Your Forever Home podcast. And this is the second episode of Bathroom Design Essentials, following on from the very popular kitchen design essentials that we had last year. We're now tackling bathrooms. Now you'll see today, for those of you who can see this episode on YouTube, that I am very lucky to have Fabieli Fontana with me today. And we're going to be chatting about bathroom layouts and what sort of things we need to think about, or for you to think about, when you are looking at your bathroom floor plans, what to avoid, what are the things that we regard as faux pas as interior designers, and really, as we did with kitchens, what are some of the layouts that work really well and what are some of the layouts that perhaps don't work so well. So we're going to talk today about layouts. Now, for those that you know who know me, you know that I am very passionate about floor plan being king, and it's absolutely no different with a bathroom. You can't really change it once you've started building, but quite surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, but when you're actually building a brand new home, it's actually the plumbing and all the pipe work that goes into the ground before the slab is even poured. So if you want to start moving loos around and moving your basins around once the slab is poured, you're actually going to start digging into the slab. So really make sure that you listen hard up today and make sure that you really assess your bathroom layouts before you start ticking the go button on getting the build started or the renovation. So a little bit about Fabieli. So Fabieli, for those of you who hadn't listened to her and I talk on a couple of episodes in the Kitchen Design Essentials, Fabieli has been with White Pebble Interiors for nearly 12 months. Time has flown by. She's a senior interior designer at White Pebble Interiors. She's an absolute straight shooter like I am, and it's really interesting behind the scenes how we debate different things. We say, well, I don't like it like this, well, I like it like this, and we have such great debates to get the best result for our clients. So it's really, really lovely to be able to work with Fabi, and I'm so happy that she's agreed with a little bit of persistence to join the podcast today. She comes with a wealth of experience. She had her own architecture and interior design studio in Brazil before moving to Australia nearly 3 years ago. So, it's incredible to think when you listen to Fabieli that she's only been speaking English for 3 years, because I just can't believe how amazing her English is for being here such a short time. But like I said, she's a straight shooter. She's going to say it just as it is, like I do, which I think for listeners out there, I know the feedback we get is they love the fact that it's, we're not talking fancy pants all the time. It is what it is. We want you to get out as much as we can. So I love that we debate lots of options, and you'll probably hear us debate about a few things today as well, and hear a few funny stories on what we've experienced. So today we're going to chat about bathroom layouts together. Welcome, Fabi.
Thank you. As always, love the introduction. Thank you so much, Frances. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Now, I'm going to start off. Fabi and I were just talking offline a little bit about, I suppose, interior design faux pas with regards to bathroom layout. So I'm really interested, as I'm sure the listeners are too. I'm going to ask you first, Fabi, what do you think one of the biggest layout mistakes that you see people make in their bathroom? And when we're talking about bathrooms here, I'll just caveat this by saying it's bathrooms and en suites. So wherever we've got, a shower and a bar or a bath, and a basin, that's what we're talking about as a bathroom. So what's the biggest layout mistake that you see people make, Fabi?
I think the main one is not actually allow space enough for each of the zones. So, and many of the times it happens because it's not planned ahead. For example, you don't really think what you're going to need in this space, and then once you have the building design ready, you start to think of you want to have two basins, but you didn't allow enough space for this, or you want to have a wet area with your freestanding bath and a shower that's not placed over the bath, but then you can't because again the space doesn't allow this. So I think the biggest mistake is actually not having very details planned what you want to have in the bathroom, and then not allow space enough for it.
Yeah, and don't we see that a lot where everything is sort of crammed in and then you don't get enough flow, and we're going to talk about accessibility later, but it has huge impacts for that. And I think even in a family bathroom on that point, having maybe 2 or 3 kids in there trying to get ready at one time, and people trying to put in too much, or just things are too big. And I mean, that goes for so many different rooms, but I think that's such a good point. I think that also goes to the point that when we're working with our clients, Fabi, don't we, that we actually ask, what do we need? How do we need to design this bathroom to work for you and your family? So how many people are going to be using this bathroom? Do we really need 2 basins, or what's really important? Some people place different importance on different elements in their bathroom. So once you understand that, you can then design around that.
Yes, that's exactly right. And as I said before, if you change your mind in the middle of the way, once you already have your design, it also makes very hard to get the best results. So most of the times, if it's possible to actually decide beforehand what you really want, and even source the fittings and decide the size of the baths and which kind of basins and which kind of toilets, it really makes much difference for the designers that are placing it into the space, to know what actually you are going to have in there exactly.
Yeah, that's also a really good point. I mean, it just makes me think about, the different loos that you can have, and there will be actually a whole, buyer's guide on toilets later in the series. But, if it's going to be a hidden cistern, well, that takes up much less space than if you're going to have a back to wall toilet. So, if space is tight, that may be an option for you. But if we don't know as designers, the fittings that you've chosen and so forth, it does make it more difficult to get the design right. Even if I'm thinking about from a plumbing perspective, if you've got a wall-mounted mixer, that's going to be quite different than if it's coming up from the bench top, or it's actually sitting on the basin. And that can also be a bit of a nightmare for the builder if he doesn't know that in advance, if you're changing it partway through. So really good tips there. So I think one of the things that I wanted to touch on as well was layout considerations. And I know that when you and I are looking at a plan that has come to us and we're assessing that plan, or we're looking at the floor plan and we're doing the internal elevations, and part of that we're looking at the actual layout of the space. I know you and I would just turn up our noses and go, oh, we open the door and slap bang there on view is the toilet. So that's definitely one of the things that we want to avoid, is when you're opening the door, you want to have a peaceful and a nice aesthetic to open onto, either a beautiful bath or a vanity.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's one thing you want to avoid, is having a door that actually opens out on the toilet. We try and tuck it away either behind the door so that it's not, full on in view. It's not only just aesthetically nicer, it just gives you a little bit more privacy as well.
Yeah, I think the first things that we always do when we are designing a bathroom is, of course, after have the client's brief, is when we are actually designing it, the first thing we always think about is, once you open the door, what's the first thing that you say? And then we start from there to place everything else. And think of that, everything that you are going to design, or all the fittings, or where the windows are, it all can interfere in a good design. So it really needs to be thought all of these along.
And that actually, you've taken the words right out of my mouth, because the next question I was going to ask you was, how do you approach bathroom layout when you're designing? And I suppose the first thing you've said is What are you going to see when you open the door? What
Yes.
other things are you thinking about when you're designing bathrooms, Fabi? That's the first one. And what are a couple of the other things you're thinking about?
Always the client's brief. So this is the most important thing. It doesn't matter how we like better bathrooms. What comes first always is their needs. But also, I think it's important to understand for each client in specifically what are the right dimensions, because we do have standard dimensions. For example, if you place a loo, you should have at least 900 from the let's say it's between the vanity and the shower, so you should have 900 to place this toilet. But some clients actually they like it larger, and same thing for the shower. So we could have showers from 800 to 1 meter, and there we go. But it really depends on what people feel like it's comfortable for them. So this is also one reason that we always have dimensions in your plans, because then you can get a type measure at home and compare with what you have or what you'd like to have, and then you know this is right for you. It's not always that standard measures fits for everyone, but of course we always start working with standard because we do want this to be comfortable.
And I suppose sorry, Fabi, go on.
It's okay, but always when we have larger spaces, it's always nicer to have more room for each of the zones.
Absolutely. And I think that's really critical for showers. I mean, when we're renovating showers, I know we frequently see showers at 800. And I mean, I think that's a good point what you raised, Fabi, about getting out your tape measure and sort of measuring out when you're seeing your plans come back, measuring out how big those areas are, and okay, how much space. Sometimes I suggest to clients to put masking tape on the floor. I think it's really important for your shower. 800 really is too small. I know that it can be a standard, and you and I, Fabi, are always looking at really a meter. 950, 900's okay, but particularly for larger men, when they're lifting up their arms, they're knocking the sides, and that's not really a comfortable experience. Sometimes we then turn the shower or we put the shower on a different wall, so you're actually in the shower in an elongated way rather than it being in a square, or so that you're using the length rather than the depth of the shower to overcome that, depending on the space. So we've talked about the loo being tucked away, and I know we're going to have a whole episode on critical dimensions in terms of what you need to know, just like we did in the kitchen. I think the one that we come up at quite a lot, and I know we're talking a little bit about this offline, is having the toilet, the main, or a loo in the main family bathroom. And I know we even have conversations with clients about whether it should even be as part of the powder room or not. But I think in the main family bathroom, we're always suggesting removing the loo from that bathroom and having a separate powder room. And I think that that's one of the key layouts that need to be considered, and often it's done from a space saving perspective. You were saying to me offline about what they do in Brazil.
No, I was saying that this was actually one of the nicest surprises regards to bathroom that I found here in Australia. I have never seen in Brazil any layouts with this separated toilet, but I do think it's really smart. Many people, more than one people, can use the bathrooms at the same time, so it's really helpful, especially for family bathrooms. I really do like it.
Yeah. And look, I know, and I think, and maybe Brazil is then following this sort of, or not following, but it's quite in keeping with the European way, because they also have it from a space saving perspective that the loo is in the main bathroom. And often there's only, in small apartments, one bathroom, and then the loo is in there as well. And it is such a nightmare, particularly share houses. And yeah, when you've got small children, they're more than happy to be in that space. And then you got someone banging on the door. I remember it from me as a child. I need to get in. And then it was only, one shower and one toilet. So it makes your life so much easier if you've got that separate toilet. And it also then creates a little bit more space for maybe a separate bath or more of a wet area when the toilet is out of there. So I think that that is something to really encourage. I just think in my own family situation, I've got 2 girls, and already at 9 and 10, they have separated themselves out. One girl uses the bathroom, and it's my bathroom. And because I've designed the powder room next to the bathroom with some cabinetry, with a really good mirror, with PowerPoints and everything that you'd need, the other daughter is actually really happy to be there. So she's away from her sister, and she can still get ready. She's got enough storage there. So it really becomes an overflow getting ready space. And I think that that is a critical area that you don't want to waste. If someone can dry their hair, put their makeup on in that space, and it's really nicely decorated, you really don't want to lose that opportunity to have this additional getting ready space when you've got a family of teenagers who really want to be away from each other. When they're young, as you said, you can have quite a few kids in there at the same time. So that would be a really, really strong suggestion, is if you really can avoid it, don't have the toilet in this main family bathroom.
Also, I think it was very smart of you to get storage in the powder room as well, especially because you have 2 girls, so you were future-proofing your home. You knew this.
Well, I never expected them to, at so young an age, declare their space. Don't touch my toothbrush. Don't touch my toothpaste. This is mine. I never expected it to happen. I was expecting it to happen at 14 or 15. But yes, girls are going through the teenage years much earlier now, but it is really gold. And that for me is future-proofing your bathroom spaces. All right. So you've talked about scale and how important that is. And we will talk about key dimensions in another episode, but that is really important to make sure that you've got the right scale pieces. We've talked about the loo being tucked away, not being a focal point. I think you also need to think about which way the door swings. Is it going to swing left or right? Is it opening out onto the vanity? Is it opening it out onto the loo? Is it opening it out onto the shower? Sometimes that space is so critical in your bathroom layout that you may need to have a sliding door. What you need to consider, I want to point out to listeners with a sliding door, is that it doesn't seal as much. So sometimes people feel a little bit, it's not as private because it's not as sealed. So you need to keep that in mind, but there's nothing to say you can't have a sliding door, on one of your bathrooms. Was there something that you mentioned windows before, Fabi? Did you want to mention anything further about how the windows can actually impact the layout?
Yes, and they do impact a lot, especially I have seen a few designs already when the windows are placed on the wall just behind the vanity. And this is a big issue because then you can't have your mirror, you can't have storage in there. And sometimes the windows are not even lined with the vanity or lined with anything else in the bathroom. So it really can be a problem if you are not thinking about the windows at the same time when you're thinking of the layout, or if you just design. This does happen a lot, that people just get the building designer to do any layout, because then at later stage they are going to get an interior design to then change things inside. But then when we get to that point and then the projects have already been approved in the council and we can't change the windows anymore, or if it's a renovation and we can't move windows around, it's really, really tricky then to be able to get the best in the layout.
I think that, I'm just thinking about all the projects where we've actually had to highlight that to the client, and we've either had to create then highlight windows if it's been possible. Yes. And as to your point, it hasn't been approved by council already. Or, the other option is to create a skylight or something else. But because we are so big on storage, having this storage at eye height is so important. And so really think about windows. Yes, natural light ventilation is so important, but you need to make sure that the vanity is in a location that you can have storage, where your vanity is as well, rather than at the side, because it just won't be as useful there. I think that also, I've completely lost my train of thought about windows. that you can have a skylight as another option for your natural lighting.
I really love skylights. I think the mood, it changes. Just the bathroom with a skylight just feels fresh and clean, and I don't know, really love it.
It is nice. I mean, you need to think about.
Yeah, it's not so usual though, especially probably because it's not so easy to get ventilation then, and people prefer when you have a window, you then can get ventilation as lighting as well.
Plus, it's so nice to look out. And I think it is, as part of your layout, thinking about the windows. A lot of, or not a lot, but many bathrooms are actually completely internal, and then there is no natural light coming in, and that is where a skylight can work if you don't have another story on top. Otherwise, you need really good artificial lighting. But I think thinking about the windows and their placement as part of the layout of that space is really critical. And also, it's come back to me now, your shower niches. This is something that's not necessarily thought about by the draftsperson or the architect, and the amount of times that Fabi and I have actually been, doing the internal elevations and assessing the design, and the way it's been laid out means that they can't have the shower niche, which is of course an awesome storage opportunity in your shower, in the right location. It's conflicting with tapware, it's conflicting with pipe works, but it might be on an exterior wall. So that also needs to be considered as part of your bathroom layout.
Also thinking about, so many times we have seen also walls that were not thick enough to have a niche or inbuilt cabinetry, and then we had to ask the builder. That's something easy to do as well, but if you are thinking a wall that where you want to place a niche or overhead cabinet that is inbuilt for storage, you always need to think about how thick is your wall as well.
And I suppose a normal stud wall is 100, and if you're going to have a built-in cabinet, just to explore that a little bit further, we need it to be at least 150. So they do need to be a little bit thicker. So the other thing that I really love incorporating, if you can, is, storage wherever you can, but a lot of times in a double-story house, there's pipe work running down from the top to the bottom. So service pipe work, and sometimes that's actually in a bathroom or somewhere downstairs where it's going to be less, I suppose, considered less impactful. But that could be an opportunity for you to have additional storage. I know in my own home, the architect had actually allocated a much bigger space for all that pipe work, and then we were able to create hidden doors and create additional storage. So I suppose the point here is make sure that any allocation of any of that additional ductwork or pipe work, if there is any excess over, that you can actually create some hidden storage areas in those spaces. You don't want to, miss out on any additional storage if you can. Okay, yes. The other thing I wanted to touch on was en suites, and the design of your ensuite can have a really big impact on how that works for you. Now, obviously an ensuite is, attached to the master bedroom, and we've seen some designs, haven't we, Fabi? I'm thinking of a couple in particular where it's not a very private ensuite, and that might be fine. You might have a relationship with your partner where, yep, be all, it's, bear all, and, you're really comfortable with each other, which is absolutely fine. But then some of the things that we need to point out to people are, what about if someone's getting up really early in the morning and putting all the lights on? What about if all the noise coming from that ensuite is going to, impact the person that's still sleeping? So noise, light, but also privacy. But we've actually seen designs of ensuite where they're actually open in a master bedroom area. So you basically walk behind the bed, you've got the walk-in robe, and then there, without any doors anywhere, you've got the ensuite. And so you need to make sure that there is the facility to close that off, also because of any, the hot water is actually generating steam that can then also get into the master bedroom. You don't really want steam in there, but it also gets into your clothes and it can damage your clothes. So it might be fine that you want this really open palatial suite, which is your ensuite and your master bedroom and your robe. But I think you need to also consider that, yes, you need to have management of light and noise, if the other person's sleeping. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Fabi.
Yeah, I think this is a specific case where functionality comes first, because it can look awesome if it's all open plan, but I think it's something really nice to have, like in a hotel or in a house only for holidays. But in a daily basis, you do, as you said, have your routine. One of you needs to get ready earlier, and it can be really annoying to have an open space.
Super annoying. I mean, we even talk to our clients about not having a night light switch on your ensuite. As soon as you open the door, the light goes on. I couldn't think of anything worse than if my partner's getting up in the night all the time to go to the loo. He doesn't put the light on, but imagine that night light going on a sensor light. It would drive me absolutely bonkers. So I think, exactly as you say, this is where functionality absolutely has to take over form. That was another thing about en-suites. So I suppose in terms of layout, just as a little bit of a synopsis, you need to think about, you're going to have a separate bath, like your point before, whether you're having a bath and a separate shower. You're happy with the shower over the bath? Some people are, some people aren't. Is there a separate shower facility somewhere else? We need to think about our accessibility. Perhaps you'd like the shower and the bath next to each other and that becomes a wet zone. Do you really need double basins? There's lots of different things to think about in terms of your layout. And I think to your point as well, that there is storage facility, and that might be determined where your vanity goes because you can't move a window. So there's some of the key things to think about for your layout. I wanted to ask you, what's the number one?
Sorry, just something else to add before we move further. You just talk about the accessibility, and I was just remembering one of the issues we always have when we are designing is when the client wants to have a walk-in shower, but they didn't ask this before when the build was being designed. So it's not big enough, the bathroom is not big enough to have a walk-in shower, and sometimes it's not about the total metrage, it's just about the form. So you're having the same square meter metrage, but just the way that it has been done, it doesn't allow to have a walk-in shower. And especially for people who wants to think in accessibility, wants to think in getting older in this place, a walk-in shower can be really, really important.
Oh, it's critical. And I think it's probably one of the key things that, comes up for us time and time again. But and another point on that is, if it's not notified to the builder right at the start that you are having that type of bathroom, they're probably going to allow for, it's not in the drawings, a shower base, which means you've got a lip, which means you can't just step-free go into your shower area. So now that we've started on accessibility, let's just cover this piece off. You need to make sure that you've got nothing to trip on. So completely flat surfaces. This is where a sliding door could really work, but that's that whole wet room style. But I think the one thing that's quite obvious to a lot of people, I think the one area that people forget about is you need to have enough room to be able to get a wheelchair. And I suppose that's the key part with the accessibility. There's one thing getting older, but it's being in a wheelchair at any point for, you're older or there's an accident or whatever it is, that there's enough room for a wheelchair to be able to go in very easily. So there's not a lot of turns and angles and things that they need to navigate around to actually utilize that bathroom really well, which to your point, Fabi, is about that layout. There's many ways to skin the cat in terms of the square meterage. They need a large turning circle. And I know that we've worked on quite a few plans with that in mind, and it's totally changed how that's been laid out and the sizes of things as well. So there's enough room to get around. The flow is so important.
It is.
So what's the number one piece of advice that you've got for our listeners for the ideal bathroom layout?
Planning. Planning is key. Yeah, as we've been talking before, you do need to know what you need beforehand. if you do, and if you can let your designer know what are your real needs, what are the things that are important for you, this is going to allow your designer to get the best out of it.
Completely agree. And I suppose that's why, as you know, as a design studio, we have the bathroom deep dives and the ensuite deep dives. So we know exactly how those rooms are going to be used. We can really delve into the sorts of things that need to be stored, how many people are going to be using that bathroom. Is it a really occasional one for guests, or is it a really hardworking 3 boys sort of bathroom? And that really does, to Fabi's point, determine how that is going to be designed, how much storage is going to be needed, and how things are going to be stored. So those deep dive assessments that we do with our clients are imperative for us to be able to design. So think about that for yourself. Like I was talking about in the kitchen design essentials, that you can work out what you need and what you need to store, and that then drives the design and it drives the joinery. Really curious to know, Fabi, is there anything that you have seen in Brazil from a design perspective that you think, that'd be pretty good in Australia if they adopted that here?
Don't think I have. I think it's pretty similar, except for, as I said before, the separated toilet as a powder room for the family room. That I think it's really smart. So on the way around, I think
the other way around.
Yeah, we should be implementing this back in Brazil. And it's not popular in there, the walk-in shower, as it is in here. And I think this is another point that you guys are ahead of time.
Wow, it's coming from Australia first. Hey, you Brazilians, get to the Aussie way. Well, I know that it's a funny little thing that when Fabi and I, well, it doesn't happen anymore, but it's a funny little thing that we do laugh about now. Fabi, or in Brazil, this is something that I noticed, that they have their towel rails above the vanity. And Fabi and I would debate this. It's like really easy to access. And I'm like, well, no, but then you see it. And in Australia, we have it much lower. And it was just a really interesting conversation that we were able to have around where you put your hand towel. And I think Fabi's been converted. I understand now why he might have it a bit lower, and I could never really understand why it had to be on display. Maybe they have nicer towels in Brazil than we do in Australia.
Maybe. How was it in Europe, by the way?
Low.
Okay, yeah.
So the towel rails are always sort of at vanity height rather than at eye height. So I just couldn't fathom having a handrail at eye height, and Fabi couldn't work out why I thought it needed to be at vanity height. So these are all the beautiful things that you discover, that design is not always the same around the world. And I think that we can learn so much from what people do in different locations. I know how much I learned from being in the Netherlands and in London, just some of the amazing design ideas that they have, that you just take what you think's really good and then you leave the rest behind. I'm glad you're not moving back to Brazil to take our really awesome ideas back there. Well, that's been fabulous. Thank you so much for joining me today, Fabi.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Another perspective, and for my lovely listeners to hear another voice as well, and a lovely accent. And before we go, I just wanted to let people know that this is dropping on Thursday. So that's the 4th of February. The first webinar of the year is on the 17th of February, which is going to be all about kitchen design. It's a very, very popular kitchen masterclass. We can only take as many as Zoom will allow. They do cut us off. So make sure you go to the website, click on the events page, and you'll be able to register there. There's also the next 3 or 4 webinars that we're hosting are actually on the website now as well. And just behind the scenes over the Christmas period, if you haven't heard already, we launched a very special Facebook group, the Renovating and Building Your Forever Home Facebook group. It has just been absolutely delightful to see people in there helping each other. I go in there every day and see what people are asking, put my 2 bobs worth in, And it's just been beautiful to see people help each other. Some of our clients are in there, people that have been following me for ages. So make sure you join. You need to answer a couple of questions, but it's free to join. And there's going to be some very special Facebook Lives that I'm going to have just in that group. So make sure you tap into that as well. So next week, we're going to be talking about design how-tos for your bathroom. So don't forget to join next week for the podcast. And if you need to chat with me directly, book a chat. You get access to my diary from the website. All right. Thanks, Barbie. And bye, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of My Forever Home. If you're ready to renovate or build a new home and you need help to create a beautiful and functional forever home, you can book a chat with me directly at whitepebbleiinteriors.com.au/chat. Have a great day.